34-year-old single mother Lisa Martinez was mocked by local contractors and real estate agents for purchasing a worthless flood-damaged farmhouse in rural Iowa that everyone warned would bankrupt her with endless repair costs and structural problems that no single parent could possibly handle. But she had no idea that draining the flooded basement would reveal a hidden entrance to a Cold War-era missile storage facility containing decommissioned nuclear warheads and classified military equipment that the Department of Defense had been searching for since 1987, transforming a struggling nurse facing eviction into the recipient of a 23's $7 million government acquisition offer and exclusive consulting contracts with the Pentagon's Historical Recovery Division. If this story makes you wonder what might be hidden beneath your own property, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because next week we've got the incredible story of a retired teacher who found a fully operational World War II bunker under his garden shed that's now worth $5 million. At 34 years old, Lisa Martinez was staring at an eviction notice for the third time in 8 months, surrounded by medical bills totaling $127,000 from her daughter Emma's emergency heart surgery, credit card statements showing $43,000 in debt, and the crushing realization that her $52,000 annual salary as a pediatric nurse at Mercy General Hospital in Des Moines could no longer cover basic living expenses for herself and her 8-year-old daughter in Iowa's increasingly expensive rental market. The divorce that had finalized 18 months earlier had left Lisa with full custody of Emma, but no financial support from her ex-husband, who had disappeared to avoid child support payments while leaving behind a trail of debt and legal complications that continued to impact Lisa's credit score and financial stability. The custody battle had consumed her savings and forced her to rely on credit cards for Emma's medical expenses when her insurance coverage proved inadequate for addressing her daughter's congenital heart condition. The pediatric nursing position that had once provided Lisa with stable income and professional satisfaction was becoming increasingly stressful as hospital budget cuts reduced staffing while increasing patient loads, creating working conditions that left her exhausted and unable to pursue the overtime shifts that might have helped address her financial crisis. The emotional toll of caring for critically ill children while worrying about her own daughter's health and their family's financial survival was becoming unsustainable. The rental market in Des Moines had changed dramatically during the past 2 years, with apartment costs increasing by 40%, while availability decreased due to corporate investment firms purchasing residential properties and converting them to higher-priced rentals that working families could no longer afford. Lisa's current landlord had informed her that their rent would increase from $1,200 to $1,950 monthly, representing an impossible burden that would consume nearly half of her take-home pay. The medical debt that had accumulated during Emma's treatment represented the largest component of Lisa's financial crisis, with cardiac surgery costs reaching $340,000 before insurance coverage that still left the family responsible for $127,000 in co-pays, deductibles, and specialized treatments that were classified as experimental despite being Emma's only option for survival. The hospital's payment plan required $2,400 monthly payments that exceeded Lisa's entire housing budget and made maintaining their apartment financially impossible. The childcare costs that were necessary for Lisa to maintain her nursing career had reached $800 monthly for after-school care and summer programs, representing additional financial pressure that forced her to choose between working enough hours to pay their bills and spending time with Emma during her recovery from major heart surgery. The lack of affordable childcare options for working single parents created impossible situations where earning money required spending money that wasn't available. The transportation challenges that affected Lisa's ability to maintain employment included a 2009 Honda Civic with 210,000 miles that required immediate repairs totaling $4,200 to remain roadworthy, including engine work, brake replacement, and transmission problems that represented more than Lisa could afford while facing eviction. The unreliable vehicle threatened her ability to reach work consistently, creating employment security issues that could eliminate her only source of income. The social isolation that had characterized Lisa's life since her divorce was compounded by the financial stress that prevented her from participating in community activities or maintaining friendships that required spending money on social events or shared meals. The emotional support that might have helped her manage the crisis was unavailable due to her work schedule and her reluctance to burden friends with financial problems they couldn't help solve. The student loan debt that Lisa had accumulated during her nursing education had reached $67,000, with monthly payments of $540 that she had been unable to make for 6 months while prioritizing Emma's medical expenses and basic survival costs. The default notices and credit score damage from missed payments were creating additional financial complications that would affect her ability to secure housing or employment in the future. The legal complications that surrounded her divorce continued to generate attorney fees and court costs that had reached $18,000 while failing to secure any financial support from her ex-husband, who had successfully hidden his assets and income through business arrangements that made enforcement of support orders practically impossible. The legal system that was supposed to protect single mothers was proving inadequate for addressing sophisticated financial manipulation by uncooperative former spouses. The health insurance premiums that were deducted from Lisa's paycheck had increased to $340 monthly, while coverage had decreased, creating situations where she was paying more for insurance that covered less of Emma's ongoing medical needs. The insurance company's frequent denials of coverage for Emma's specialist appointments and medications were creating additional financial stress while threatening her daughter's health outcomes. The desperate search for affordable housing that might allow Lisa to maintain stability for Emma while reducing their monthly expenses had led her to explore options outside Des Moines, where property costs were lower, but employment opportunities for specialized healthcare workers were limited. The prospect of changing jobs, while Emma needed continuity of medical care, created impossible choices between financial survival and her daughter's health needs. The retirement savings that Lisa had accumulated during 8 years of nursing career had been completely exhausted during Emma's medical crisis, eliminating any financial security for the future while leaving her completely dependent on her current income for both immediate survival and long-term financial planning. The loss of retirement savings represented not only current financial stress, but also the elimination of any hope for eventual economic security. The family support that might have provided assistance during the crisis was unavailable due to her parents' own financial limitations and geographic distance, with her mother living on Social Security in Arizona and her father having passed away 2 years earlier after his own expensive battle with cancer that had exhausted the family's resources. The extended family members who remained in Iowa were dealing with their own economic challenges and were unable to provide financial assistance. The professional development opportunities that might have led to higher-paying positions in healthcare, administration, or specialized nursing required additional education and certification programs that Lisa couldn't afford while managing her current crisis. The career advancement that could have provided long-term solutions to her financial problems was impossible to pursue while struggling to maintain basic survival for herself and Emma. The workplace stress that had intensified during recent months included mandatory overtime shifts that prevented Lisa from spending adequate time with Emma during her recovery, creating guilt and emotional strain that affected her job performance while generating income that was immediately consumed by medical bills and basic survival expenses. The hospital's staffing shortages had created working conditions where nurses were responsible for more patients than they could safely manage, increasing liability concerns while reducing job satisfaction. The credit score damage that had resulted from missed payments and high debt utilization had reached 480, making it virtually impossible for Lisa to qualify for conventional loans or secure apartment rentals without substantial security deposits that she couldn't afford. The financial mistakes that had been forced by medical emergencies were creating long-term consequences that would affect her family's housing and employment opportunities for years to come. The utility bills that had accumulated during winter months when Lisa had been unable to maintain full payments included $890 in past due amounts for electricity and heating, with disconnection notices threatening to eliminate essential services during Iowa's harsh winter weather when Emma's health condition made maintaining adequate heating crucial for her recovery. The choice between paying utility bills and medical expenses was forcing impossible decisions that threatened both immediate safety and long-term health outcomes. The food security challenges that had emerged as Lisa's debt crisis deepened included reliance on food banks and assistance programs that provided basic nutrition but couldn't address Emma's specialized dietary needs related to her cardiac medication and recovery requirements. The monthly grocery budget that had been reduced to $180 for both family members was insufficient for maintaining the healthy diet that Emma's medical team had recommended for optimal healing and growth. The psychological stress that affected both Lisa and Emma included anxiety about homelessness, uncertainty about medical care continuity, and the emotional impact of constant financial worry that was interfering with Emma's recovery and Lisa's ability to provide the stable, nurturing environment that her daughter needed during a critical period of health restoration. The family counselor had recommended therapy services that their insurance didn't cover and that Lisa couldn't afford through private payment. The employment security concerns that kept Lisa awake at night included the hospital's rumors about additional budget cuts that might eliminate nursing positions, creating the possibility that her only source of income could disappear while she was facing eviction and overwhelming debt obligations. The healthcare industry's consolidation and cost-cutting measures were creating job insecurity, even for experienced nurses with specialized skills and positive performance reviews. The legal liability concerns that had emerged from Lisa's financial crisis included potential lawsuits from medical creditors who were threatening to garnish her wages or seize any assets she might acquire in the future. The medical billing companies had hired collection agencies that were pursuing aggressive tactics, including threats of legal action that created additional stress while consuming time and energy that Lisa needed for patient care and family responsibilities. The educational disruption that Emma was experiencing due to their housing instability included 3 school changes during the past year, creating academic and social challenges that were affecting her emotional development during an already difficult period of medical recovery. The constant uncertainty about where they would be living next month was preventing Emma from forming stable friendships and maintaining consistent academic progress. The vehicle maintenance crisis that threatened Lisa's ability to maintain employment had reached a critical point when her Honda Civic's transmission began failing during her commute to work, creating the possibility that she might lose her job due to attendance problems caused by transportation breakdown. The cost of transmission replacement exceeded the vehicle's value, while being essential for maintaining the income that kept their family from complete financial collapse. The insurance complications that had emerged during Emma's treatment included disputes over coverage for specialized cardiac procedures that resulted in thousands of dollars in additional bills, while creating delays in care that potentially threatened her daughter's health outcomes. The insurance company's requirements for pre-authorization and second opinions were creating bureaucratic obstacles that interfered with medical treatment while generating additional costs that Lisa couldn't afford. The housing market research that Lisa had conducted in desperation revealed that apartment rentals throughout central Iowa had increased beyond her financial reach, while housing assistance programs had waiting lists exceeding 2 years and eligibility requirements that excluded working families whose income was slightly above poverty guidelines, but insufficient for market-rate housing. The gap between assistance program limits and actual housing costs was creating impossible situations for working families facing medical crises. The debt consolidation options that Lisa had explored through financial counseling services revealed that her debt-to-income ratio was too high for conventional loan programs, while high-interest debt consolidation loans would actually increase her monthly payments rather than providing relief. The financial advice that was available to low-income families was largely irrelevant for addressing medical debt crises that exceeded normal debt management strategies. The community resource exhaustion that had occurred during Lisa's 18-month financial crisis included depletion of assistance from local churches, charitable organizations, and mutual aid groups that had provided temporary help but couldn't address the scale and duration of medical debt obligations. The charitable resources that existed in central Iowa were designed for short-term emergencies rather than long-term financial crises caused by major medical events. The employment discrimination concerns that affected Lisa's job search efforts included potential employers' access to credit reports that revealed her financial crisis, creating situations where financial problems caused by medical emergencies could prevent her from securing better-paying positions that might help address those same financial problems. The cycle of financial crisis preventing economic improvement was creating seemingly impossible barriers to recovery. The winter utility costs that had consumed an additional $340 monthly during Iowa's severe cold season represented money that had been diverted from medical bill payments, creating a cascade of late fees and penalty charges that increased her total debt while forcing choices between heating their apartment and maintaining payments to medical creditors. The seasonal variations in basic living costs were creating additional pressure during the most expensive time of year. The prescription medication costs that weren't fully covered by insurance had reached $180 monthly for Emma's cardiac medications, representing essential expenses that couldn't be reduced without threatening her daughter's health and recovery. The pharmaceutical costs that were required for maintaining Emma's stability were consuming money that Lisa needed for housing and basic survival, creating impossible choices between immediate health needs and long-term housing security. The childcare crisis that had emerged when Emma's regular after-school program closed due to funding cuts forced Lisa to arrange more expensive private childcare that consumed an additional $200 monthly while providing less reliable coverage that sometimes required her to miss work shifts. The childcare instability was threatening both her employment security and Emma's emotional stability during a critical period of medical recovery. The legal document complications that surrounded Lisa's divorce had left her responsible for joint debts that her ex-husband had accumulated, including credit card balances totaling $12,000 that were affecting her credit score and debt-to-income ratio, despite her lack of access to the purchases or benefits that had generated those obligations. The legal system's failure to provide adequate protection from spousal financial abuse was creating ongoing consequences that affected her family's survival. The social services navigation challenges that consumed hours of Lisa's limited free Time included complex application processes for assistance programs that required extensive documentation while providing minimal benefits that didn't address the scale of medical debt crisis. The bureaucratic requirements for accessing help were designed for people without full-time employment obligations and were nearly impossible for working parents to complete while maintaining their jobs. The emotional exhaustion that affected Lisa's ability to make optimal decisions was compounded by sleep deprivation, caused by working night shifts to earn differential pay while caring for Emma during day hours and managing financial crisis during any remaining time. The physical and mental fatigue was affecting her judgment and creating additional risks for both her employment performance and her daughter's care needs. The network support depletion that had occurred as Lisa's financial crisis extended beyond what friends and colleagues could reasonably help with, had created social isolation that eliminated both emotional support and practical assistance opportunities. The shame and exhaustion associated with ongoing financial crisis were preventing her from maintaining relationships that might have provided resources or opportunities for improving their situation. But what Lisa didn't know, as she faced the impossible choice between accepting homelessness or finding a way to dramatically reduce her housing costs, was that a seemingly disastrous real estate decision driven by pure desperation would soon reveal one of the most significant Cold War discoveries in American history, transforming her family's financial nightmare into opportunities that exceeded anything a pediatric nurse from Iowa could have imagined about the hidden value of flood-damaged rural property. The online real estate listing that would change Lisa Martinez's life forever appeared at 11:47 p.m. on February 23, 2024. During one of her sleepless nights spent desperately searching for affordable housing options, while Emma slept fitfully in the bedroom of their soon-to-be-lost apartment. The property listing for 847 Timber Creek Road in Fairfield, Iowa, showed a flood-damaged farmhouse on 12 acres priced at $47,000, exactly matching the amount Lisa could potentially access through her depleted 401k early withdrawal, despite the massive penalties and tax consequences that would eliminate most of her remaining retirement savings. The farmhouse had been listed for 8 months without generating any serious buyer interest, primarily due to the extensive flood damage that had occurred during the historic spring flooding of 2023, when the nearby Skunk River had overflowed its banks and inundated the basement and first floor of the 1940s-era structure. The listing photos revealed water-stained walls, buckled hardwood floors, and a basement that remained partially flooded nearly 10 months after the disaster, creating obvious structural and environmental hazards that responsible buyers would avoid. The real estate agent who had agreed to show Lisa the property, Janet Morrison from Fairfield Realty, had been brutally honest about the farmhouse's condition during their phone conversation, warning that the flood damage was so severe that most contractors had estimated repair costs exceeding $80,000 before the house would be habitable for a family with a child. Morrison had specifically advised against the purchase, stating that single mothers without construction experience should never attempt to rehabilitate flood-damaged properties that required specialized remediation and reconstruction. The property inspection that Lisa conducted on February 28, 2024, revealed the full extent of damage that had made the farmhouse unsaleable for nearly a year. The basement remained partially flooded with standing water that had created obvious mold problems throughout the foundation walls, while the first floor showed evidence of water damage that extended 4 feet up the walls, requiring complete drywall replacement, flooring reconstruction, and electrical system renovation to meet current safety codes. The structural engineers report that the previous owners had commissioned showed foundations settling and potential structural damage that could require tens of thousands of dollars in repairs before the building would be safe for occupancy. The engineering assessment had identified foundation cracks, floor joist damage, and potential load-bearing wall problems that would require professional construction expertise and substantial financial investment to address properly. The environmental hazards that were documented in the property disclosure included potential asbestos in the basement insulation, lead paint throughout the interior surfaces, and mold contamination that would require professional remediation before the house could be safely occupied by anyone, particularly a child with existing health concerns. The environmental cleanup requirements alone were estimated to cost between $15,000 and $25,000 through certified remediation contractors. The electrical system that had been compromised by floodwater would require complete replacement according to local building codes, including new wiring throughout the house, updated electrical panels, and installation of ground fault circuit interrupters that hadn't existed when the house was originally constructed. The electrical renovation costs were estimated at $12,000 to $18,000, depending on the extent of rewiring required to meet contemporary safety standards. The plumbing system had been damaged by freezing temperatures after the flood, with burst pipes in the basement and first floor that would require extensive repair and replacement. The water supply lines, drainage systems, and sewage connections would need complete renovation, with estimated costs ranging from $8,000 to $14,000 for basic functionality restoration, not including bathroom and kitchen fixture replacement. The heating and cooling systems had been completely destroyed by floodwater, requiring replacement of the furnace, ductwork, and air conditioning units that would cost an estimated $16,000 to $22,000 for adequate climate control in Iowa's extreme weather conditions. The HVAC replacement would be essential for maintaining Emma's health during her continued cardiac recovery, making this expense non-negotiable despite the financial pressure it would create. The roof condition showed evidence of water damage and potential structural problems that would require professional assessment and possible replacement before winter weather could create additional damage. The roofing contractor's preliminary estimate suggested costs between $12,000 and $18,000 for a complete roof replacement that would protect the interior renovations from weather damage during Iowa's harsh winter and spring seasons. The property taxes that accompanied the farmhouse purchase would add $2,800 annually to Lisa's financial obligations, representing additional fixed costs that would strain her budget while providing no immediate benefit during the extensive renovation period. The tax assessment was based on the property's pre-flood value and hadn't been adjusted to reflect the current condition and reduced market value of the damaged structure. The insurance complications that surrounded flood-damaged properties included difficulty obtaining homeowners' coverage from standard carriers and significantly higher premiums for properties with documented flood history. The insurance quotes that Lisa obtained ranged from $2,400 to $3,600 annually, representing substantial increases over typical homeowners' insurance costs while providing limited coverage for future flood damage. The septic system inspection revealed additional problems that would require immediate attention before the property could be safely occupied, with estimated repair costs of $6,000 to $10,000 for pumping, cleaning, and potential drain field replacement. The septic system had been compromised by floodwater and required specialized restoration to prevent environmental contamination and health hazards. The well water testing showed contamination issues that would require filtration system installation and ongoing maintenance to provide safe drinking water for Emma, whose cardiac condition made water quality particularly important for her health and medication effectiveness. The water treatment system installation would cost an estimated $4,000 to $6,000, with ongoing filter replacement and maintenance adding monthly expenses to their tight budget. The property's remote location, 47 miles from Mercy General Hospital where Lisa worked, would add substantial transportation costs and commute time that would affect both her work schedule and Emma's access to medical care. The daily round-trip commute of 94 miles would consume approximately $340 monthly in fuel costs, while adding nearly 2 hours to Lisa's workday, creating additional childcare needs and reducing her time with Emma during the critical recovery period. The building permits that would be required for the extensive renovation work were estimated to cost $3,200 to $4,800, depending on the scope of electrical, plumbing, and structural repairs needed to bring the property up to current building codes. The permit process would require detailed contractor plans and inspections that would add time and complexity to renovation projects that Lisa was hoping to manage on a limited budget. The contractor estimates that Lisa obtained for essential repairs ranged from $75,000 to $110,000 for basic habitability restoration, not including cosmetic improvements or modern amenities that would make the farmhouse comfortable for a family recovering from medical crisis. The construction costs exceeded the property purchase price by more than double, creating obvious financial impossibility for someone already facing overwhelming debt obligations. The property survey revealed additional complications, including boundary disputes with neighboring agricultural land and potential easement issues that could affect future development or resale value. The legal complications surrounding rural property ownership would require attorney consultation and potential additional costs for resolving title and boundary questions that urban residents rarely encountered. The Internet and telecommunications infrastructure in the rural Fairfield area was limited to satellite connections, with data caps and reliability issues that would affect Lisa's ability to manage medical appointments, insurance communications, and potential remote work opportunities that might supplement her nursing income. The isolation from reliable communication services would create additional challenges for managing Emma's ongoing medical care and coordination with specialists in Des Moines. The school district boundaries that included the farmhouse property would require Emma to change schools again, creating additional educational disruption during her medical recovery, when stability and familiar routines were particularly important for her emotional and academic development. The rural school district had limited resources and specialized programs compared to urban schools, potentially affecting Emma's educational opportunities during critical elementary years. The closest neighbors to the farmhouse property were nearly 2 miles away, creating isolation that could be problematic for emergency situations, particularly given Emma's cardiac condition that might require immediate medical attention. The remote location would eliminate the community support and informal assistance that urban neighborhoods provided during family crises or medical emergencies. The property's history of flood damage indicated ongoing vulnerability to future flooding, events that could destroy any renovation investments and create repeated cycles of damage and repair costs. The climate change projections for Iowa suggested increasing frequency and severity of flooding events that would make the property a long-term financial liability rather than a secure housing investment. The heating costs for the large farmhouse structure during Iowa's severe winters were estimated at $420 to $580 monthly, representing substantial increases over apartment heating costs while providing less efficient climate control in a building that lacked modern insulation and energy efficiency features. The utility costs would consume money that Lisa needed for medical bills and basic family expenses. The maintenance requirements for rural property ownership included responsibilities for well water system upkeep, septic system maintenance, private road maintenance, and land management that urban renters never faced. The ongoing maintenance costs and labor requirements would create additional financial and time pressures for a single mother already struggling to balance work and family responsibilities. The mortgage qualification challenges that Lisa faced included her damaged credit score, high debt-to-income ratio, and the property's flood history that made conventional financing difficult to obtain. The mortgage terms that she could access required higher interest rates and larger down payments that would consume most of her remaining financial resources while creating monthly payments that strained her budget. The legal liability concerns associated with purchasing flood-damaged property included potential unknown environmental contamination, structural problems that might not be apparent during initial inspection, and responsibility for any problems that might affect neighboring properties or groundwater quality. The legal risks of rural property ownership exceeded those of urban rental housing while providing fewer legal protections for families with limited resources. The construction timeline estimates suggested that basic habitability restoration would require 6 to 8 months of intensive work, during which time Lisa and Emma would need alternative housing arrangements that would add rental costs to renovation expenses. The temporary housing requirements would create double housing costs during the renovation period, making the financial burden even more impossible to manage. The contractor availability in rural Iowa was limited, with most qualified professionals booked months in advance and charging premium rates for projects in remote locations. The construction labor shortage that affected rural areas would create additional delays and costs for renovation projects that required immediate completion to provide housing security for Lisa and Emma. The materials costs for renovation work had increased substantially due to supply chain disruptions and inflation, making contractor estimates volatile and potentially understating the actual costs that would be required for completing essential repairs. The uncertainty surrounding construction costs made financial planning impossible and increased the risk that renovation expenses would exceed available resources. The property sale complications that might arise if Lisa needed to sell the farmhouse quickly would include the same flood damage issues that had prevented previous sales, potentially trapping her family in an unsuitable property without options for recovery if the renovation proved financially impossible. The resale limitations would eliminate the property as a potential financial asset and could create additional losses if circumstances forced a distressed sale. The child safety concerns associated with living in a flood-damaged property during renovation included exposure to environmental hazards, construction dangers, and the stress of unstable living conditions during Emma's critical recovery period. The health risks to a child with cardiac conditions were substantial and could interfere with her medical progress while creating additional healthcare costs. The social isolation that would result from moving to rural property would eliminate Lisa's access to urban support services, community resources, and professional networks that had provided assistance during their medical crisis. The move would separate them from the medical team, support services, and community connections that had been essential for managing Emma's condition and maintaining Lisa's employment. The transportation reliability concerns included the risk that vehicle breakdowns in remote locations could prevent Lisa from reaching work or Emma from accessing medical care, creating employment and health security risks that could worsen their crisis. The rural location would eliminate access to public transportation or emergency assistance that urban residents could rely upon during vehicle problems. The weather vulnerability of rural properties during Iowa's severe storms, tornadoes, and Winter weather would create additional safety concerns and potential property damage that urban apartment living didn't include. The weather risks would be particularly problematic, given Emma's health condition and their limited resources for dealing with emergency situations or property damage. The environmental isolation of the rural property would eliminate Emma's access to extracurricular activities, social opportunities, and support services that urban communities provided for children recovering from serious medical conditions. The rural location would prevent Emma from maintaining friendships and participating in activities that were important for her emotional development during a critical recovery period. The emergency services access in rural Fairfield County was limited compared to urban areas, with longer response times for ambulance, fire, and police services that could be critical given Emma's cardiac condition and the family's vulnerability during the renovation period. The reduced emergency services could create life-threatening delays during medical emergencies that required immediate intervention. The utility service reliability in rural areas was less dependable than urban infrastructure, with more frequent power outages and service disruptions that could affect Emma's medical equipment and create safety concerns during extreme weather events. The utility reliability issues would be particularly problematic, given Emma's health needs and the family's dependence on consistent power for medical devices and communication with healthcare providers. The professional service availability in rural areas was limited for specialized contractors, repair services, and emergency maintenance that might be needed during the renovation process. The limited service availability would create additional costs and delays for addressing problems that arose during the property restoration, while potentially compromising safety and habitability standards. The financial risk assessment that any reasonable advisor would have provided showed that purchasing the flood-damaged farmhouse represented financial suicide for a single mother already facing overwhelming debt obligations. The mathematical impossibility of completing necessary renovations while maintaining employment and medical bill payments should have prevented any responsible person from proceeding with the purchase. But despite all these obvious problems and financial impossibilities, Lisa's desperation had reached a point where the flooded farmhouse represented her only option for providing Emma with stable housing while reducing their monthly expenses enough to make medical bill payments manageable. The mathematical reality of their situation made a disastrous real estate purchase seem like the least bad option among alternatives that all led to homelessness and complete financial ruin. The decision that Lisa made on March 8, 2024, to withdraw $47,000 from her 401k and purchase the flood-damaged farmhouse despite overwhelming evidence that the decision would worsen rather than improve their financial situation was driven by maternal desperation rather than rational financial planning. The early withdrawal penalties and tax consequences would consume an additional $14,000 of her retirement savings, while saddle her with tax obligations that she couldn't afford. But the alternative of homelessness during Emma's medical recovery seemed even more threatening to her daughter's survival and future. The purchase agreement that Lisa signed included inspection waivers and as-is clauses that eliminated most legal protections for buyers, but the property's condition and price point made seller concessions impossible to negotiate. The legal documents transferred all responsibility for known and unknown problems to Lisa, while providing no recourse if the renovation costs exceeded her financial capacity or if additional problems were discovered after the sale. The closing date of March 22, 2024, represented both hope and terror for Lisa as she committed her family's last financial resources to a property that everyone with construction experience had warned would bankrupt her. The farmhouse keys. that she received that day felt like both a lifeline and a death sentence, representing her last chance for providing Emma with stable housing while potentially destroying any hope for financial recovery. But what Lisa couldn't have known, as she signed the documents transferring ownership of the seemingly worthless flood-damaged farmhouse, was that the property's most significant feature lay hidden beneath the standing water in the basement, where decades of accumulated debris and flood damage concealed one of the most important Cold War installations ever constructed on American soil, containing secrets that would transform her desperate gamble into the most financially successful real estate decision in Iowa history. Lisa Martinez had never expected to become a single mother facing financial ruin, and certainly never imagined that her dedication to helping children would lead to her own daughter's medical crisis that would test every value and principle that had guided her through 34 years of building a meaningful life dedicated to service, family, and community responsibility. Her journey from a hopeful nursing student to a desperate single mother purchasing a flood-damaged farmhouse had been shaped by consistent choices that demonstrated the character traits that would make her worthy of the extraordinary transformation that awaited discovery beneath the standing water in her new property's basement. Lisa's childhood in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, had been shaped by her parents' emphasis on education, hard work, and helping others, values that were demonstrated daily through her father Miguel's career as a high school counselor who stayed late to help struggling students, and her mother Carmen's volunteer work at the local community health clinic where she provided translation services for Spanish-speaking families navigating the healthcare system. The Martinez household had been characterized by dinner-table conversations about social responsibility and the importance of using one's talents to benefit the broader community rather than pursuing purely personal advancement. The decision to pursue nursing as a career had been motivated by Lisa's genuine desire to help children during their most vulnerable moments, rather than by considerations of salary or professional prestige that influenced many of her college classmates. Her choice to specialize in pediatric nursing had been inspired by volunteer experiences at the University of Iowa Children's Hospital during her undergraduate years, where she had witnessed the profound impact that compassionate healthcare workers could have on families facing medical crises that threatened their children's lives and their families' stability. Lisa's academic performance during her nursing education at the University of Iowa had been exceptional, earning a 3.9 GPA while working part-time jobs to minimize student loan debt and completing extensive clinical rotations that demonstrated her natural aptitude for pediatric care. Her professors had consistently praised her ability to connect with young patients and their families during highly stressful medical situations, noting her rare combination of technical competence and emotional intelligence that made her particularly effective in pediatric emergency and cardiac care settings. The nursing program, clinical rotations that Lisa had completed included extensive experience in pediatric intensive care units, emergency departments, and cardiac surgery recovery areas where she had learned to manage complex medical equipment, while providing emotional support to families facing life-threatening situations. The intensive training had prepared her not only for technical nursing responsibilities, but also for the emotional demands of caring for critically ill children while supporting parents who were experiencing the worst moments of their lives. The scholarship that Lisa had earned for academic excellence and community service had covered a portion of her nursing education costs, but she had still accumulated $45,000 in student loans that she had approached responsibly through careful budgeting and consistent payments that had maintained excellent credit standing throughout her early career. Her financial management had been exemplary, with emergency savings, retirement contributions, and debt payments that demonstrated the personal responsibility and planning that characterized her approach to all aspects of life. The professional development that Lisa had pursued throughout her nursing career included specialized certifications in pediatric advanced life support, cardiac care, and emergency medicine that had made her particularly valuable for complex cases requiring advanced technical skills and calm decision-making under pressure. The additional training had been completed through evening and weekend programs, while she maintained full-time employment, demonstrating her commitment to excellence and continuous improvement in her chosen profession. Lisa's employment at Mercy General Hospital had begun immediately after graduation, with recognition as one of the most promising new nurses in the pediatric department, leading to rapid advancement to senior nursing positions that involved training new staff and serving as charge nurse during critical situations. Her colleagues had consistently praised her leadership abilities and her talent for maintaining morale during stressful periods when the pediatric unit was dealing with multiple critically ill children requiring intensive care. The community service that Lisa had maintained throughout her nursing career included volunteer work with local youth organizations, health education programs in underserved communities, and participation in medical mission trips to rural areas where healthcare access was limited. Her volunteer activities had reflected her deep commitment to using her professional skills to benefit people who couldn't afford private healthcare, while building community connections that enriched her understanding of the populations she served. The marriage that Lisa had entered with David Martinez in 2018 had initially seemed like a partnership built on shared values and mutual support for each other's career goals, but had gradually revealed fundamental differences in character and priorities that became apparent during the stress of Emma's medical diagnosis and treatment. David's inability to cope with the emotional and financial demands of their daughter's cardiac condition had led to increasingly irresponsible behavior that ultimately forced Lisa to choose between protecting her daughter and preserving her marriage. The divorce proceedings that had consumed 18 months of Lisa's life had been complicated by David's attempts to avoid financial responsibility while claiming joint custody rights that would have interfered with Emma's medical care schedule and stability needs. Lisa's determination to protect Emma's interests had required extensive legal consultation and court appearances that had consumed her savings while demonstrating her unwavering commitment to her daughter's welfare above all other considerations. The financial management that Lisa had maintained, even during her marriage, had been characterized by careful budgeting, consistent savings, and responsible spending that had provided security for her family while avoiding the consumer debt that affected many healthcare workers who earned good salaries but lived beyond their means. Her personal financial responsibility had been demonstrated through car purchases with cash, modest housing choices that prioritized savings over luxury, and retirement planning that showed long-term thinking about her family's future security. The parenting approach that Lisa had developed for raising Emma had emphasized education, creativity, and emotional intelligence while maintaining the structure and consistency that pediatric healthcare workers understood was essential for children's development. Her parenting style reflected her professional understanding of child development combined with genuine love and respect for Emma's individual personality and interests, creating a supportive environment that had helped Emma thrive despite the challenges of her medical condition. The work ethic that characterized Lisa's approach to nursing had been recognized through employee awards, positive patient evaluations, and colleague recommendations that demonstrated her reputation for going above and beyond basic job requirements to ensure optimal outcomes for her young patients. The extra time that she spent with families, her willingness to work overtime during staffing shortages, and her leadership during emergency situations had made her one of the most respected nurses in the pediatric department. The continuing education that Lisa had pursued throughout her career included attendance at medical conferences, completion of online training programs, and participation in professional nursing organizations that kept her current with advances in pediatric cardiac care and emergency medicine. Her commitment to professional development had been maintained even during personal financial stress, demonstrating her dedication to providing the highest quality care regardless of her own circumstances. The patient advocacy that had characterized Lisa's nursing practice included fighting insurance companies for coverage of necessary treatments, coordinating care between multiple specialists, and ensuring that families understood complex medical information and treatment options. Her advocacy work had often extended beyond her official duties to include helping families navigate healthcare bureaucracy and access resources that could improve their children's outcomes and their families' stability during medical crises. The mentorship that Lisa had provided to newer nurses included formal preceptor responsibilities and informal guidance that had helped dozens of healthcare workers develop the skills and confidence necessary for effective pediatric nursing. Her teaching abilities had been recognized through assignments training new graduates and her selection for committee work that shaped nursing education and patient care protocols at Mercy General Hospital. The medical knowledge that Lisa had acquired through 8 years of pediatric nursing experience included expertise in cardiac conditions, emergency interventions, and family-centered care that had made her particularly effective in managing complex cases requiring coordination between multiple medical specialties. Her clinical knowledge had been developed through direct patient care, combined with extensive study and professional development that exceeded the minimum requirements for maintaining nursing licensure. The crisis management skills that Lisa had developed through years of pediatric emergency nursing had prepared her for handling high-stress situations with calm decision-making and effective communication that reassured families while coordinating complex medical interventions. The crisis management experience had been essential for managing Emma's medical emergency and would prove valuable for the unexpected discoveries that awaited her at the flood-damaged farmhouse. The cultural competency that Lisa had developed through her bilingual background and diverse patient population had made her particularly effective in serving immigrant families and non-English-speaking patients who needed healthcare, advocacy, and cultural interpretation during medical crises. Her language skills and cultural understanding had been valuable assets for the hospital, while reflecting her family's commitment to serving underserved populations. The financial literacy that Lisa had maintained despite her current crisis had been developed through careful attention to budgeting, investment planning, and debt management that had provided financial security until Emma's medical emergency created expenses that exceeded any reasonable emergency planning. Her previous financial success had been achieved through responsible decision-making and long-term planning that demonstrated her capability for managing complex financial situations under normal circumstances. The networking relationships that Lisa had built throughout her nursing career included connections with physicians, social workers, administrators, and community leaders who had provided professional references and personal support during her family's medical crisis. The professional relationships that she had cultivated through excellence and reliability had created a network of allies who respected her competence and character. The personal integrity that had guided Lisa's decisions throughout her life had been demonstrated through her commitment to ethical behavior in professional settings, honest communication with patients and families, and reliable follow-through on commitments made to colleagues and supervisors. Her reputation for trustworthiness had been built through consistent behavior that matched her stated values and principles regardless of personal convenience or advantage. The problem-solving abilities that Lisa had developed through nursing, education and clinical experience included analytical thinking, creative resource identification, and systematic approaches to complex challenges that had made her effective in medical emergencies and administrative responsibilities. The problem-solving skills that had served her well in healthcare settings would be essential for managing the renovation challenges and unexpected discoveries that awaited her at the farmhouse property. The emotional resilience that Lisa had, demonstrated throughout Emma's medical treatment, had included maintaining professional performance while managing personal crisis, providing emotional support to her daughter during frightening medical procedures, and persevering through financial stress that would have overwhelmed many people. Her emotional strength had been tested repeatedly, but had proven sufficient for protecting Emma's emotional well-being while managing their family's survival during impossible circumstances. The communication skills that Lisa had developed through patient education, family counseling, and professional collaboration had made her effective in explaining complex medical information, advocating for patient needs, and building therapeutic relationships with children and families during traumatic experiences. Her communication abilities had been essential for managing Emma's medical care while maintaining positive relationships with healthcare providers who would be crucial for her daughter's ongoing treatment. The time management expertise that Lisa had acquired through balancing demanding nursing schedules with single parenting responsibilities had required exceptional organizational skills and priority management that allowed her to fulfill professional obligations while providing adequate attention to Emma's medical and emotional needs. The time management skills that had been necessary for maintaining employment while managing a medical crisis would be valuable for coordinating renovation work while continuing her nursing career. The resource identification abilities that Lisa had developed through years of helping families access healthcare services, insurance benefits, and community support programs had made her particularly skilled at researching options and navigating bureaucratic systems that could provide assistance during crises. The resource identification skills that had helped other families would prove essential for managing the legal and financial complexities that would emerge from her farmhouse discovery. The teaching capabilities that Lisa had demonstrated through patient education, family counseling, and professional mentorship had been recognized through formal training assignments and positive evaluations from supervisors who valued her ability to explain complex concepts clearly while building confidence in people who were learning new skills. The teaching abilities that had been developed through nursing practice would be valuable for the educational and consultation opportunities that would emerge from her future discoveries. The quality improvement experience that Lisa had gained through participation in hospital committees focused on patient safety, care coordination, and outcome measurement had provided her with understanding of systematic approaches to complex organizational challenges. The quality improvement knowledge that she had acquired through professional development would be relevant for managing the institutional relationships and collaborative projects that would result from her farmhouse discovery. The research skills that Lisa had developed through nursing education and continuing professional development included literature review, data analysis, and evidence-based practice that had kept her current with advances in pediatric nursing, while contributing to improved patient outcomes at Mercy General Hospital. The research capabilities that had been developed through healthcare practice would be valuable for understanding and documenting the historical significance of her future discovery. The cultural preservation awareness that Lisa had inherited from her family's immigrant experience had instilled appreciation for historical significance and the importance of protecting cultural heritage that might be lost if not properly documented and preserved. The cultural awareness that had been developed through family history and professional experience with diverse populations would be crucial for understanding the historical importance of what she would discover beneath her farmhouse. The community. Building experience that Lisa had gained through volunteer work, professional organizations, and neighborhood involvement had demonstrated her ability to collaborate with diverse stakeholders while building consensus around shared goals. The community-building skills that had been developed through service would be essential for managing the community impact and stakeholder relationships that would emerge from her discovery. The ethical decision-making framework that had guided Lisa's choices throughout her personal and professional life had been based on principles of honesty, fairness, and service to others that had been consistently applied even when those principles created personal disadvantage or inconvenience. The ethical foundation that had been developed through family values and professional training would be crucial for managing the legal and moral complexities that would surround her farmhouse discovery. The legacy consciousness that Lisa had developed through her work with families facing life-threatening medical conditions had given her deep appreciation for the importance of preserving meaningful contributions that could benefit future generations. The legacy awareness that had been shaped by witnessing families' concerns about their children's futures would influence her decisions about how to manage discoveries that could impact historical understanding and national security. But what made Lisa most worthy of the extraordinary transformation that awaited her discovery was not any single characteristic or achievement, but rather the combination of professional competence, personal integrity, family dedication, and community service that had defined her approach to every challenge she had faced throughout her life. The character traits that had made her an exceptional pediatric nurse and devoted mother were the same qualities that would guide her responsible management of one of the most significant Cold War discoveries in American history, ensuring that her family's financial transformation would be achieved through honorable means that contributed to historical understanding and national security rather than personal advantage at the expense of others. The decision to purchase the flood-damaged farmhouse had been motivated by desperation rather than opportunity, but Lisa's approach to managing the property would be guided by the same values and principles that had shaped her nursing career and parenting responsibilities. The character that had been tested through medical crisis and financial hardship would prove sufficient for managing discoveries that would challenge her understanding of American history while providing her family with opportunities that exceeded anything she could have imagined during the desperate months when homelessness had seemed inevitable. It was 7:23 a.m. on April 15, 2024, when Lisa Martinez first discovered the hidden entrance to what would soon be recognized as the most significant Cold War installation ever found on American soil, concealed beneath 3 feet of murky flood. Water in the basement of her seemingly worthless farmhouse, exactly 24 days after she had committed her family's last financial resources to a property that every expert had warned would bankrupt her. The discovery occurred as Lisa was attempting her first systematic drainage of the basement using a rented sump pump, driven not by curiosity, but by the desperate need to assess the flood damage and begin the impossible task of making the farmhouse habitable for Emma before their temporary housing arrangements expired. The basement that Lisa entered that morning had been flooded for nearly 11 months, creating a stagnant pool of contaminated water that concealed decades of accumulated debris, fallen ceiling tiles, and what appeared to be the collapsed remains of storage shelving that had been damaged by the historic 2023 spring flooding. The smell of mold and decay was overwhelming, requiring Lisa to wear a respirator mask while operating the industrial sump pump that she had rented for $89 per day, using money that should have been saved for Emma's medical bills. The sump pump operation that Lisa had begun at 6 a.m. was proceeding slowly due to the volume of water and the pump's frequent clogging from debris that had been suspended in the stagnant floodwater for months. The rental equipment was struggling to handle the contaminated water that contained fragments of insulation, pieces of wood paneling, and accumulated sediment that had settled throughout the basement during the prolonged flooding period that had made the property uninhabitable and unsaleable. The first indication that something unusual lay beneath the floodwater came when the pump's intake hose encountered what Lisa initially assumed was a large piece of fallen ceiling material, but which resisted her attempts to move it aside, and appeared to be made of metal rather than the wooden beams and drywall that she had expected to find in the basement debris. The obstruction that was preventing effective water removal seemed to be a flat metal surface that extended beyond what she could reach with the pump hose, suggesting a structure that was far larger than typical basement storage or mechanical equipment. The water level that had dropped to approximately 18 inches by 9:30 a.m. revealed the outline of what appeared to be a massive steel door or hatch that had been concealed by floodwater and debris for nearly a year. The metal surface showed signs of corrosion from prolonged water exposure, but appeared to be constructed of heavy-gauge steel that was far more substantial than anything that would typically be found in a rural farmhouse basement, suggesting industrial or military construction, standards that were completely inconsistent with the property's agricultural history. The debris removal that Lisa undertook to better examine the mysterious metal structure revealed that the apparent door was approximately 8 feet square and was equipped with a wheel-operated locking mechanism that appeared to be designed for creating an airtight seal. The construction quality and engineering sophistication of the metal barrier exceeded anything that Lisa had seen in civilian construction projects, suggesting specialized applications that required security and environmental protection far beyond typical basement storage needs. The historical research that Lisa conducted during her lunch break using her phone to search property records and local history websites revealed that the farmhouse had been built in 1943 during World War II as part of a rural development program, but provided no information about the purpose or construction details of the basement installation that she had discovered. The property records showed multiple ownership changes during the 1950s and 1960s, with several years of government ownership that seemed unusual for agricultural property in rural Iowa. The decision that Lisa made to attempt opening the mysterious doctor was motivated by her desperate need to understand the full scope of her property's condition and potential renovation requirements, despite her awareness that investigating unknown basement installations could involve safety hazards or legal complications that she couldn't afford to address. The maternal responsibility to provide Emma with safe housing overrode her caution about exploring potentially dangerous or problematic discoveries on her new property. The locking mechanism that Lisa examined showed evidence of sophisticated engineering with precision machining and corrosion-resistant materials that had maintained functionality despite decades of neglect and nearly a year of floodwater exposure. The wheel-operated lock required substantial physical effort to turn, but eventually yielded to Lisa's persistent attempts, revealing that the door was designed to open downward into what appeared to be a much larger underground chamber that extended far beyond the basement's foundation walls. The underground facility that Lisa discovered when she finally managed to open the heavy steel door exceeded anything she could have imagined existing beneath a rural Iowa farmhouse, with concrete walls, professional lighting systems, and environmental controls that had maintained optimal conditions despite the surface flooding that had damaged the house above. The facility extended approximately 40 feet in each direction from the basement access point, with multiple chambers that contained equipment, documentation, and materials that were obviously related to military or government operations. The first chamber that Lisa entered contained what appeared to be a sophisticated command and control center with electronic equipment, communication systems, and monitoring devices that looked like they belonged in a military installation rather than beneath a flood-damaged farmhouse. The equipment showed signs of being from the 1960s or 1970s, based on the analog displays and vacuum tube technology, but had been maintained in excellent condition within the climate-controlled underground environment. The documentation that Lisa discovered in metal filing cabinets throughout the facility included technical manuals, operational procedures, and correspondence that clearly identified the installation as a Cold War-era missile command and storage facility operated by the Strategic Air Command during the height of nuclear tensions between the United States and Soviet Union. The papers were marked with various security classifications and contained detailed information about missile systems, targeting procedures, and emergency protocols that were obviously classified government materials. The missile storage area that Lisa found in the facility's largest chamber contained 2 complete nuclear warheads that appeared to be decommissioned but still represented the most significant discovery of Cold War military hardware ever found in civilian hands. The missiles were mounted on transport equipment and accompanied by detailed maintenance records that showed they had been removed from active service in 1987 but had never been transported to official decommissioning facilities as required by arms control treaties. The realization that she had discovered a secret nuclear weapons facility beneath her flood-damaged farmhouse created overwhelming anxiety for Lisa, who understood that her family's desperate attempt to find affordable housing had inadvertently involved them in national security issues that could result in federal investigation, property seizure, and legal complications that would destroy any hope of financial recovery. The magnitude of her discovery exceeded anything she was prepared to handle while managing Emma's medical needs and their ongoing financial crisis. The phone call that Lisa made to the FBI's Des Moines field office at 2:47 p.m. on April 15th was initially met with skepticism from agents who assumed that her report of finding nuclear weapons in a farmhouse basement was either a prank call or a case of civilian misidentification of military surplus equipment. The duty agent who took Lisa's call required her to provide detailed descriptions of the facility and equipment before agreeing to dispatch investigators to examine her claims about discovering classified Cold War installations. The federal response team that arrived at Lisa's farmhouse on April 16th included FBI agents, Department of Defense specialists, and nuclear weapons experts whose preliminary examination confirmed that she had discovered one of the most significant Cold War artifacts in American history. The facility represented a previously unknown Strategic Air Command installation that had been constructed in secret during the 1960s as part of a classified program to distribute nuclear weapons throughout rural America for protection against Soviet first strike capabilities. Dr. James Patterson, from the Department of Defense's Nuclear Security Division, led the initial assessment team that confirmed the authenticity and historical significance of Lisa's discovery, while expressing amazement that such an important military installation had remained hidden for nearly 4 decades after being abandoned by the Strategic Air Command. The federal investigation revealed that the facility had been classified at such high levels that records of its existence had been restricted to fewer than 12 government officials, most of whom had died without transferring knowledge of the installation's location to their successors. The historical significance that government experts assigned to Lisa's discovery included recognition that the facility contained the most complete Cold War nuclear command center ever preserved, with original equipment, documentation, and weapons that provided unprecedented insights into American nuclear strategy during the height of superpower tensions. The installation represented a time capsule of nuclear weapons technology and strategic planning that had been assumed lost when similar facilities were decommissioned during arms reduction treaties of the late 1980s. The legal framework that federal authorities established for managing Lisa's discovery included immediate recognition of her legal ownership of the property, while acknowledging the government's national security interests in the classified materials and weapons that she had found. The complex legal negotiations that followed balanced property rights with national security concerns, while ensuring that Lisa would receive appropriate compensation for providing access to materials that were essential for historical research and nuclear security analysis. The media attention that followed the official announcement of Lisa's discovery on April 22, 2024, created international headlines about the single mother who had found nuclear weapons while trying to drain her flooded basement. The story captured a global imagination about the extraordinary discoveries that could be hidden in ordinary places, while highlighting the intersection of personal financial crisis and historical significance that had brought Lisa's family to national attention. The financial negotiations that the Department of Defense initiated with Lisa included recognition that her property contained assets of extraordinary value to the federal government for historical preservation, national security analysis, and public education about Cold War history. The government's initial offer of $8.7 million for purchasing the property and facility was followed by additional compensation agreements for Lisa's cooperation with ongoing research and her consultation on historical preservation projects related to Cold War installations. The consulting contracts that federal agencies offered to Lisa included long-term agreements for her participation in historical research projects, museum exhibitions, and educational programs that would document and preserve Cold War history for future generations. The consulting fees and royalty agreements that accompanied these contracts provided Lisa with annual income exceeding $380,000, while ensuring that her family's financial security would be maintained through her involvement with historically significant projects. The educational opportunities that emerged from Lisa's discovery included partnerships with major universities and research institutions whose Cold War studies programs sought her participation in academic conferences, documentary projects, and historical preservation efforts. The academic collaborations provided additional income streams while contributing to scholarship that would advance understanding of nuclear strategy and Cold War military history. The museum partnerships that were established for exhibiting materials from Lisa's discovery included agreements with the Smithsonian Institution, the National Nuclear Security Administration, and international museums whose Cold War exhibitions would feature artifacts and documentation from the Iowa installation. The museum licensing agreements provided substantial royalty payments, while ensuring that the historical materials would be preserved and displayed for public education. The documentary rights that Lisa negotiated with major production companies included exclusive arrangements for filming at the facility and interviews about her discovery experience, generating additional income while creating lasting records of the installation and its historical significance. The documentary projects attracted international audiences interested in Cold War history, while providing Lisa with ongoing royalty payments from global distribution agreements. The book publishing contract that Lisa signed with a major historical publisher provided advances and royalty agreements for her memoir about discovering the nuclear facility while managing her daughter's medical crisis and their family's financial emergency. The book project attracted widespread interest from readers fascinated by the intersection of personal struggle and historical discovery that characterized Lisa's experience. The speaking engagement opportunities that resulted from Lisa's national recognition included presentations at universities, historical societies, and professional conferences, where her story inspired audiences while generating substantial fees for sharing her experiences with discovering and managing historically significant properties. The speaking fees ranged from $15,000 to $35,000 per presentation, providing additional income while contributing to public education about Cold War history. The property management agreements that Lisa negotiated with federal agencies included her continued ownership of the farmhouse and surrounding land, while providing government access to the underground facility for ongoing research and historical preservation activities. The management arrangements ensured that Lisa maintained control over her property while receiving substantial annual payments for federal use of the facility for legitimate research purposes. The security consulting work that Lisa was offered by private companies and government contractors included advice on identifying and managing discoveries of classified materials or historically significant installations that might be found on private property. The consulting work provided additional income while utilizing the expertise that Lisa had developed through managing her own discovery and the complex legal and practical issues that accompanied finding classified government materials. The real estate investment opportunities that Lisa's financial success enabled included purchase of additional properties in rural Iowa, where historical research suggested other Cold War installations might be located. The investment strategy provided potential for additional discoveries, while generating rental income and property appreciation that further enhanced her family's long-term financial security. The educational fund that Lisa established for Emma's future included sufficient resources for medical expenses, private education, and college tuition that would ensure her daughter's health needs and academic opportunities would never again be limited by financial constraints. The educational fund represented more than $2.3 million in dedicated resources that would provide Emma with every opportunity for success, regardless of future medical expenses or educational goals. The charitable foundation that Lisa created from her financial success focused on providing assistance to families facing medical crises that threatened their financial stability and housing security. The foundation's annual grants exceeded $480,000 and helped dozens of families avoid the homelessness and financial ruin that Lisa had faced before her discovery transformed their circumstances. The home renovation that Lisa completed using her newfound financial resources transformed the flood-damaged farmhouse into a beautiful family home that provided Emma with stability and comfort while preserving the historical character that made the property significant. The renovation costs of $340,000 created a showcase home that demonstrated how historical preservation could be combined with modern family needs. The medical care improvements that Lisa's financial success enabled for Emma included access to the best pediatric cardiac specialists in the country, experimental treatments that weren't covered by insurance, and ongoing monitoring that ensured optimal health outcomes. The enhanced medical care had resulted in significant improvements in Emma's condition while eliminating the financial stress that had previously interfered with her treatment. The career transformation that Lisa experienced included transition from bedside nursing to serving as a historical consultant and public speaker whose expertise in managing classified discoveries was sought by government agencies, academic institutions, and private companies. The career change provided greater income and flexibility while utilizing skills that Lisa had developed through her nursing background and discovery management experience. The community impact of Lisa's discovery included recognition of rural Iowa as a region with significant Cold War history, leading to tourism development and historical preservation projects that created economic benefits for the entire Fairfield area. The local economic impact exceeded $12 million annually through tourism, research activities, and media production that brought national attention to previously overlooked rural communities. The academic recognition that Lisa received included honorary degrees from major universities and awards from historical societies that acknowledged her contribution to Cold War research and historical preservation. The academic honors reflected recognition that her discovery and subsequent management had advanced scholarly understanding of nuclear strategy while demonstrating how ordinary citizens could contribute to historical knowledge. The international attention that Lisa's discovery attracted included interest from foreign governments and international organizations studying Cold War history and nuclear weapons policy. The international recognition led to consulting opportunities and speaking engagements in Europe and Asia, where her experience was relevant for understanding American nuclear strategy and its impact on global security during the Cold War period. The legal precedents that were established through Lisa's case created frameworks for managing future discoveries of classified materials on private property while protecting both national security interests and property owners' rights. The legal arrangements that were developed provided models for similar situations while ensuring that individuals who discovered historically significant materials would be fairly compensated for their cooperation with government agencies. The historical preservation standards that were implemented at Lisa's facility became models for protecting and maintaining Cold War installations that represented important chapters in American military history. The preservation techniques that were developed through Lisa's cooperation with federal agencies ensured that future generations would have access to authentic Cold War artifacts and documentation. The family security that Lisa achieved through her discovery included not only financial resources, but also the knowledge that Emma's medical needs would always be met, and that their family would never again face the poverty and homelessness that had threatened their survival before the basement drainage revealed the hidden nuclear facility. The transformation of their circumstances exceeded anything that Lisa could have imagined during the desperate months when medical bills had consumed their savings and threatened their housing stability. The vindication that Lisa experienced included recognition that her desperate decision to purchase the flood-damaged farmhouse, despite universal expert advice against the purchase, had been the most financially successful real estate decision in Iowa history. The property that contractors had warned would bankrupt her had instead provided financial security that would last for generations while contributing to historical understanding and national security research. The future opportunities that Lisa's success created included potential for additional discoveries, ongoing consulting income, and educational projects that would ensure her family's continued prosperity while contributing to historical preservation and public education. The transformation of her life from desperate single mother to nationally recognized historical figure demonstrated how extraordinary opportunities could emerge from the most challenging circumstances. 3 years after discovering the nuclear facility beneath her flood-damaged farmhouse, Lisa Martinez had become one of the most respected figures in Cold War historical research, while maintaining ownership of property that continued generating substantial income through government partnerships and educational programs. The transformation of her life represented one of the most dramatic reversals of fortune in contemporary American history, proving that extraordinary treasures could be hidden beneath the most ordinary and unpromising circumstances. The story of how a single mother's desperate attempt to provide housing for her daughter led to the discovery of one of the most significant Cold War installations in American history became legendary throughout the historical research community, while inspiring other property owners to examine their own holdings for potential historical significance. The legacy of Lisa's discovery extended far beyond her family's financial transformation to contribute to national understanding of Cold War history and the extraordinary measures that had been taken to protect American security during the nuclear age. Today, the Martinez Cold War Research Center continues to reveal new insights about nuclear strategy and military history while providing ongoing income for Lisa's family that has transformed their lives beyond anything they could have imagined. During the desperate months when homelessness seemed inevitable, the center represents one of the most successful examples of how historical discoveries can provide both personal transformation and public benefit through responsible management of culturally significant resources. The ultimate vindication that Lisa received through her discovery proved that sometimes the most desperate decisions, made in circumstances that seem hopeless, can lead to opportunities that transform not only individual lives but contribute to advancing human knowledge and understanding of our shared history. Her story demonstrates that extraordinary potential can be hidden in the most ordinary places, waiting for discovery by people who have the courage to explore possibilities that others dismiss as impossible or worthless. 7 years after Lisa Martinez first discovered the nuclear weapons facility beneath her flood-damaged farmhouse, the Martinez Cold War Research Institute had become the most prestigious military history research center in the world, attracting scholars, government officials, and international dignitaries whose recognition of her discoveries had fundamentally altered humanity's understanding of Cold War nuclear strategy, while transforming not only Lisa's life, but establishing new standards for historical preservation, civilian government cooperation, and the potential for ordinary citizens to make extraordinary contributions to national security and academic knowledge that benefit all of humanity. The revelation that had shocked the international intelligence community during the 5th year of research came when Dr. Sarah Chen's team from MIT discovered that the nuclear facility beneath Lisa's farmhouse was not an isolated installation, but rather the command center for a vast network of hidden Cold War sites throughout the American Midwest that had been constructed in absolute secrecy during the 1960s as part of Operation Prairie Shield, a classified program so sensitive that its existence had been known only to 3 presidents and fewer than 20 government officials who had taken its secrets to their graves without leaving any official records for their successors. The declassified documents that emerged from Lisa's collaboration with federal agencies revealed that the Iowa facility had served as the central coordination point for 17 similar installations across Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, and Illinois, creating a distributed nuclear command system that would have enabled American military leaders to maintain nuclear strike capabilities even if major military bases and government facilities were destroyed in a Soviet first strike. The strategic significance of the network exceeded anything that Cold War historians had previously understood about American nuclear preparedness and defensive planning. Dr. Michael Rodriguez from the National Security Agency had spent 3 years analyzing communications equipment discovered at Lisa's facility before concluding that the Martinez installation represents the most sophisticated Cold War command and control system ever documented, with capabilities that exceeded those of NORAD and the Pentagon for coordinating nuclear responses during extreme crisis scenarios. The technical analysis revealed that the rural Iowa farmhouse had been equipped to serve as an alternate Pentagon if Washington, D.C. were eliminated by nuclear attack. The international archaeological significance that UNESCO assigned to Lisa's discovery led to World Heritage Site designation that recognized the facility as representing one of the most important examples of Cold War military architecture and strategic planning ever preserved. The UNESCO designation provided international protection and funding while establishing educational programs that brought scholars and visitors from around the world to rural Iowa for research and historical education that contributed to global understanding of nuclear-age tensions and military strategy. The technology transfer agreements that emerged from Lisa's discovery included licensing arrangements with aerospace companies, defense contractors, and technology firms whose analysis of 1960s-era equipment found in the facility led to innovations in communications, environmental control, and security systems that generated substantial royalty payments while contributing to contemporary advances in civilian and military technology. The prehistoric Cold War innovations were providing solutions to modern technological challenges that contemporary engineering had been unable to address effectively. The pharmaceutical discoveries that resulted from analysis of medical supplies and life support systems at Lisa's facility included preservation techniques and chemical formulations that had been developed for maintaining human health during extended underground operations in nuclear crisis scenarios. The medical innovations that had been perfected for Cold War survival were providing breakthrough treatments for contemporary health conditions while generating licensing revenue that exceeded $15 million annually for Lisa's family foundation. The agricultural applications that scientists discovered through studying food preservation and hydroponic systems at the underground facility included techniques for sustainable food production that could address global food security challenges, while requiring minimal resources and environmental impact. The Cold War survival technologies were being implemented in regions throughout Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where traditional agriculture had failed to provide reliable nutrition for growing populations. The environmental restoration innovations that had been preserved at Lisa's facility included air filtration, water purification, and waste management systems that exceeded the efficiency of contemporary environmental technologies, while using only materials and techniques that were available. During the 1960s, the environmental technologies that had been developed for nuclear survival were providing solutions to climate change and pollution challenges that modern environmental science had been unable to solve effectively. The educational revolution that resulted from Lisa's collaboration with international institutions included establishment of the Martinez Fellowship Program that provided full scholarships for students from disadvantaged backgrounds to pursue graduate degrees in history, international relations, and nuclear policy studies. The fellowship program was supporting over 200 students annually, while contributing to development of expertise in fields that were crucial for understanding and preventing nuclear conflicts. The documentary series that National Geographic produced about Lisa's discovery and its global implications, titled The Farmer's Nuclear Secret: How One Mother's Desperation Changed History, became the most watched historical documentary series in television history while generating additional income, exceeding $8 million through international distribution rights and educational licensing agreements. The series influenced public understanding of Cold War history while inspiring global interest in historical preservation and nuclear policy research. The book that Lisa co-authored with Dr. James Patterson, Beneath the Heartland, The Secret, Nuclear Network That Could Have Saved America, became an international bestseller that provided additional income while establishing Lisa as a respected author and thought leader whose insights about civilian involvement in national security were influencing government policy and academic research throughout the world. The book's success reflected growing recognition that ordinary citizens could make extraordinary contributions to historical knowledge and national security understanding. The museum network that was established for exhibiting discoveries from Lisa's facility included partnerships with institutions in 12 countries, whose Cold War exhibitions were attracting millions of visitors annually while generating substantial licensing revenue through artifact loans, educational programs, and collaborative research projects. The Smithsonian Institution's permanent Martinez Cold War exhibition had become the most popular display in the museum's history, while influencing public understanding of nuclear-age tensions and their continuing relevance for contemporary international relations. The government consulting contracts that Lisa received for advising federal agencies on historical preservation, civilian government cooperation, and nuclear policy included exclusive arrangements with the Department of Defense, State Department, and National Security Council, whose recognition of her expertise had made her one of the most influential civilian advisors on nuclear policy and Cold War history in American government. The consulting fees and security clearances that accompanied these positions provided substantial income while contributing to policy development that enhanced national security. The international speaking circuit that Lisa had joined included presentations at the United Nations, NATO headquarters, and major universities throughout Europe and Asia, where her experiences with discovering and managing classified Cold War installations were influencing international policy on nuclear security, historical preservation, and civilian involvement in national defense planning. The speaking fees ranged from $50,000 to $125,000 per presentation, while contributing to global understanding of nuclear policy and Cold War history. The research institute that was built at Lisa's property had become a model for public-private cooperation in historical research and national security education, with annual budgets exceeding $12 million and research programs that were advancing understanding of nuclear policy, military history, and international relations, while providing employment for dozens of scholars and technical specialists. The Institute represented one of the most successful examples of how individual discoveries could contribute to institutional development that benefited entire academic fields. The technology commercialization programs that were developed through Lisa's Institute included partnerships with major corporations whose implementation of Cold War innovations was generating annual licensing revenue exceeding $34 million, while contributing to advances in telecommunications, environmental control, medical technology, and security systems that were benefiting millions of people worldwide. The commercial success of historical technologies demonstrated that archaeological discoveries could provide immediate practical benefits rather than merely academic interest. The congressional recognition that Lisa received included testimony before Senate committees on nuclear policy, historical preservation, and civilian contributions to national security, where her experiences influenced legislation that enhanced protection for historically significant sites while improving cooperation between government agencies and private citizens who discovered classified materials. The legislative impact of Lisa's advocacy was creating better frameworks for managing similar discoveries while protecting both national security interests and individual property rights. The presidential recognition that Lisa received during a White House ceremony honoring civilian contributions to national security included the Presidential Medal of Freedom and Recognition as one of the most important contributors to Cold War historical understanding in American history. The presidential citation acknowledged that Lisa's discovery and subsequent research had fundamentally enhanced American understanding of nuclear strategy while demonstrating how ordinary citizens can make extraordinary contributions to national security and historical knowledge. The Nobel Peace Prize nomination that Lisa received for her contributions to nuclear policy research and international cooperation reflected global recognition that her work was advancing understanding of nuclear weapons and their control in ways that contributed to reducing international tensions and preventing nuclear conflicts. The nomination represented acknowledgement that individual citizens could influence global peace and security through historical research and educational activities. The family foundation that Lisa expanded through her continued success had grown to provide over $8 million annually in grants to families facing medical crises, students pursuing education in history and international relations, and communities seeking to preserve historically significant sites. The foundation's impact extended throughout the Midwest while contributing to national programs that supported historical education and nuclear policy research. The property value transformation that had occurred at Lisa's farmhouse exceeded anything in real estate history, with the original $47,000 purchase price creating assets now valued at over $89 million through the combination of historical significance, research facilities, and ongoing government partnerships. The property appreciation represented one of the most successful real estate investments in American history, while demonstrating how historical discoveries could create lasting economic value. The medical care transformation that Lisa's success had enabled for Emma included access to experimental treatments and surgical procedures that had not only addressed her original cardiac condition, but had restored her to complete health with no ongoing medical restrictions or concerns. Emma's transformation from a critically ill child facing uncertain health prospects to a healthy teenager with unlimited opportunities represented the most meaningful aspect of Lisa's financial success. The educational opportunities that Emma's health and financial security had enabled included enrollment at prestigious private schools, participation in international exchange programs, and access to educational experiences that were developing her interests in international relations and historical research. Emma's academic achievements were reflecting both her intellectual capabilities and the educational advantages that her mother's discovery had made possible. The career preparation that Emma was receiving through internships at the Martinez Institute and exposure to international scholars and government officials was preparing her for potential careers in diplomacy, international relations, or historical research that could continue her family's contribution to nuclear policy and Cold War studies. Emma's developing expertise was suggesting that the Martinez family's influence on these fields would continue into the next generation. The community transformation that had occurred in Fairfield, Iowa, as a result of Lisa's discovery, had created economic development that employed over 400 people, while attracting millions of dollars in tourism and research funding that had revitalized the entire region. The local economic impact had transformed Fairfield from a declining agricultural community to an internationally recognized center for historical research and nuclear policy education. The regional development that had resulted from establishment of the Martinez Institute included infrastructure improvements, educational programs, and business development that had created opportunities for residents throughout southeastern Iowa, while attracting new residents and businesses that were contributing to sustainable economic growth. The regional impact demonstrated how individual discoveries could generate community benefits that lasted for generations. The global influence that Lisa's work had achieved through international partnerships and educational programs was contributing to nuclear policy research and historical education in dozens of countries, where understanding of Cold War strategy and nuclear weapons control was essential for maintaining international peace and security. The global reach of Lisa's influence was demonstrating how American historical discoveries could contribute to worldwide peace and stability. The academic legacy that Lisa was creating through the Martinez Institute included research programs that were training the next generation of nuclear policy experts and Cold War historians whose work would continue advancing understanding of these critical topics for decades to come. The educational impact of Lisa's discovery was ensuring that knowledge gained from the Cold War would be preserved and applied to contemporary international challenges. The technological legacy that was emerging from Lisa's discoveries included innovations in communications, environmental control, and security systems that were being implemented throughout government and civilian applications, where enhanced capability and reliability were essential for protecting public safety and national security. The technological contributions were demonstrating how historical research could provide practical solutions to contemporary challenges. The policy legacy that Lisa's work was creating included frameworks for civilian government cooperation, historical preservation, and nuclear security that were influencing how democratic societies managed classified materials and historical sites while balancing national security concerns with public education and academic research needs. The policy innovations were creating better approaches to managing similar discoveries while protecting both security interests and historical knowledge. The cultural legacy that Lisa's story was creating included recognition that extraordinary opportunities could emerge from the most desperate circumstances, and that individual courage and persistence could lead to discoveries that benefited entire societies. The inspirational impact of Lisa's transformation was encouraging other people facing difficult circumstances to explore unconventional possibilities while contributing to cultural understanding that individual citizens could make significant contributions to historical knowledge and national security. The scientific legacy that was developing through research at Lisa's facility included advances in understanding Cold War technology, nuclear strategy, and military history that were contributing to academic fields, while providing practical insights for contemporary policy development and international relations. The scientific contributions were demonstrating how historical discoveries could advance multiple fields of study while providing practical benefits for contemporary society. The international cooperation legacy that Lisa's work had fostered included partnerships between American institutions and organizations throughout the world whose collaborative research on Cold War history and nuclear policy was contributing to global understanding of these topics while building relationships that enhanced international peace and stability. The cooperative relationships were demonstrating how historical research could contribute to diplomatic progress and international understanding. The legal legacy that had been established through Lisa's case included precedents for managing discoveries. of classified materials, frameworks for civilian government cooperation, and protections for individuals who found historically significant materials, while ensuring that national security interests were protected. The legal innovations were creating better approaches to similar situations, while providing models for other democratic societies facing comparable challenges. The historical preservation legacy that was being created through Lisa's work included standards for protecting and maintaining Cold War installations, techniques for preserving classified materials for research purposes, and methods for making historically significant sites accessible for education while maintaining security and environmental protection. The preservation innovations were ensuring that Cold War history would be available for future generations while contributing to broader historical preservation efforts. 10 years after discovering the nuclear facility beneath her flood-damaged farmhouse, Lisa Martinez had become one of the most influential figures in Cold War historical research and nuclear policy education, while maintaining ownership of property that continued generating substantial income through research partnerships, educational programs, and technology licensing agreements. The transformation of her life from desperate single mother facing homelessness to internationally recognized expert on nuclear policy and Cold War history represented one of the most extraordinary personal transformations in contemporary history. The vindication that Lisa experienced was not only personal, but extended to complete transformation of understanding about the potential for ordinary citizens to make extraordinary discoveries that could influence national security, historical knowledge, and international peace. The recognition that her desperate decision to purchase a flood-damaged farmhouse had led to one of the most significant historical discoveries of the modern era proved that extraordinary opportunities could be hidden in the most unlikely circumstances. The inspiration that Lisa's story provided for other individuals facing desperate circumstances demonstrated that persistence, courage, and willingness to explore unconventional possibilities could lead to transformations that exceeded anything that conventional wisdom suggested was possible. The universal appeal of Lisa's story reflected fundamental human hopes about the potential for individual agency to create positive change even in the most challenging circumstances. The legacy that Lisa was creating through her continued work on nuclear policy education, historical preservation, and international cooperation was ensuring that her discovery would continue benefiting humanity for generations to come, while demonstrating how individual citizens could contribute to global peace and security through dedication to historical truth and educational excellence. The lasting impact of her work was proving that extraordinary discoveries could create benefits that extended far beyond personal transformation to influence the course of human history. Today, the Martinez Cold War Research Institute continues to advance understanding of nuclear policy and military history, while serving as a model for how historical discoveries can provide both academic knowledge and practical solutions to contemporary challenges. The Institute represents one of the most successful examples of how individual courage and persistence can lead to discoveries that transform not only personal circumstances but contribute to advancing human knowledge and promoting international peace and security. The story of how a single mother's desperate attempt to provide housing for her medically fragile daughter led to the discovery of one of the most significant Cold War installations in world history proves that extraordinary treasures can be hidden beneath the most ordinary and unpromising circumstances, and that sometimes our most desperate moments force us to explore possibilities that reveal opportunities beyond anything we could have imagined. What hidden potential might be waiting beneath the surface of your own most challenging circumstances. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.